So, welcome everybody. My name is Andrew Willoughby. I work on ConnexUs at Search for Common Ground, and am really excited for our speakers today. This webinar is part of the Asia Religious and Ethnic Freedom Project. We do at least quarterly webinars where we focus on freedom of religion and belief, religious and ethnic freedom topics in the Asian context. Asia Ref is a USAID funded consortium made up of the American Bar Association, Rule of Law Initiative, Freedom House, Internews, PAC, and Search for Common Ground. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Hi, Zender. Hi, everyone. Good night and good morning there. I'm Era. I'm a program director of the ABA Rulai in Indonesia. So I'm a lawyer. Basically, I'm a lawyer. And I already work with the ABA since 2020. So, yeah. So Zender asked me to talk about law and civil liberties. So when we talk about that new president, so we need to know what his vision, and there are 8 vision of that president, and I think 2 of from 8 this is relate with that freedom of religion. The first vision, they said strengthen the ideology of the Pancasila, democracy and human rights. Maybe not all of you know about the Pancasila, but Pancasila is 5 basic rule in Indonesia, and then one of them, like the first Pancasila said, believe on one God. So, and the 8th vision said strengthen the harmonious alignment of life with the environment, nature, and culture, as well as increase tolerance between religious community to achieve a just and prosperous society. And I try to research about this. They also talking about guarantee of safety of worship, that we know this is like one of big issue in the freedom of religion in Indonesia. So before we talk about that, what that government, next government have to respond. So let's see what is that dominant problem about the freedom of religion in Indonesia, especially that law side. First, a lot of that discriminatory regulation on FoRB issues. For example, almost that all that local government produced that hijab regulation. So they forced the woman to wear hijab. And also since 2006 or 8, I forgot it, there is a joint decree of the Ministry of Religious Affairs, Attorney General, and Minister of Home Affairs regarding that Indonesian Ahmadiyya congregation. And this is main problem in Ahmadiyya issue that bring them discrimination, dealing with the discrimination, because this degree said Ahmadiyya cannot spread the religion and cannot interpret the religion, that we know interpretation and spread of religion is a fundamental rights in the freedom of religion. And we also have the law 1965, this law about the blasphemy law. But the good news is blasphemy cancelled by new penal code, but it will be exist 2026. So now the blasphemy law still exists in Indonesia, and a lot of cases of the blasphemy. I read that a lot of police use that blasphemy law, but actually 2020 this laws doesn't exist again. And also have problem with interpretation, discriminatory interpretation of the policy. For example, almost people in Indonesia believe that country all only have 6 illegal religion: Islam, Christian, Catholic, Buddhist, Hindus, and Konghucu. But based on that, this law, the law, they never said only there are 6 religious. They say there are religion exist in Indonesia, but not by legal, but because discriminatory interpretation and almost all public believe that only six religion in Indonesia. And the third problem is house of worship permit, and then act of intolerance like burning of mosques, in charge, persecution of Ahmadiyya or Shia, and recognition of ancestral religious or indigenous people. We still have a lot of problem with this, and also adherent of belief. So this is different between the belief and then religion in Indonesia. And for the adherent of belief, actually, they already have like constitutional court decision that gave them recognition. But the problem is the implementation still have a lot of problem. For example, a lot of like ministry doesn't facilitate that believer column. For example, when the believer wanna join with the military or going to the bank, and not they don't have like only column of religion but no column for a believer. And the other problem is blasphemy for sure, and of course freedom of expression, because we have like electronic law, but this law it will be doesn't exist 2006 after a new penal code. And also a problem with new religion. I just read a few days ago, around like 8 days ago, the MUI, like independent organization in Muslim, but these organization they independent, but they conduct like state function. So, and this is also one of problem. And they said no space for agnostic in Indonesia. I want to say this is example how to difficult with that new religion. And of course, I want to talk about that new penal code. New penal code between threatening or protection FoRB. There are several articles that relate. One is about Article 1 about the living law. It becomes a tools of criminalization. Okay, and okay, Zender remind me. And you can read this, and there are article 300 to 305 concerning crime against religion. This is good, but it will be threatening or protecting FORB depend on how to judge or government interpret this law. So because that, I want to go to continue to the recommendation. First, the new government under the Ministry of Human Rights needs to produce an official interpretation of the criminal code that is in line with the human rights. And then the second recommendation, the new government needs to review and cancel discriminatory regulation. And the third, the new government needs to conduct due diligence on the implementation of constitutional core about the believer. And the last, the national government needs to ensure that local government facilitate the establishment of houses of worship for all religion without discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry to cut you off. This is so interesting. We'll come back in the discussion. Moving us along, I'll hand the floor to Indira. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Zander. I'm Indira from Gal. I'm so sorry, my camera is trouble. So I share to you a discuss about problem for being. I see from a smaller context, especially in West Sumatra. Era from Jakarta like Anis, but I'm from West Sumatra, so I see from a smaller context, which is in Indonesian Sumatra region, that in problematic religious freedom issue, yeah, starting from the mandatory hijab rules for women, non-Muslim women, the ban on house of worship on Muslim, and the problem of attack on those who are religious minorities, such as persecution and other collaboration in Abaroli. My organization make a legal clinic for religious community This is Arat Sab. This is a belief in indigenous people in West Sumatra. That is the community minority in West Sumatra. The majority are Muslim in my so my expect support to legal aid, legal assistance to indigenous people in Mentawai. We support to opening legal aid, support case, especially for B and legal service in a community. How about FoRB in Mentawai and West Sumatra? For at least the last 5 years, we have monitored many changes in religion or belief in Mentawai on the population card in the religion column. People who have belief outside the 6 religions in Indonesia often move their domicile to the Mentawai to take care of changing religious information on their residence card. Alicia is the vibes in for being Mentawai. So currently we see that the combination of religion and local Mentawai belief at the religious leader level is experiencing a problem. Much, for example, often to get scholarship to young people in Mentawai, we have to change religions to the donor religion. For example, the young people is Arat Sebulungan. So if one go to Padang or get out to Mentawai for education, so the young people change the religion, the same the donor religion. This is many problem in Mentawai Island. So we advocate to the problem. However, there is a side of appreciation in the form of ritual. Their belief we are also accommodated in religious holiday. This is positive vibes, but many negative for Mentawai Island. It is an important note that award have not been found at the federal and central government level, but is in level and central government. Mentawai situation belief on Mentawai indigenous people usually attack and no respect to community. For example, the regulation about province West Sumatra is not respect and nothing regulated about Mentawai, only regulation about Muslim in regulation in West Province. I think that situation in Mentawai Island. So, however, respect for religious administration between the Mentawai and West Sumatra, mainland West Sumatra region is very different. In Mentawai, there have been goodwill in other areas of West Sumatra. There have been no change. Many people of different regions to take photo with the hijab on their residence card. This make them unable to access certain public service, for example, social security. So situation in Mentawai and mainland West Sumatra region is different. In Mentawai, if you change the religion is okay, is something nothing. But in West Sumatra is the very problem and many problem to the people. This is my experience about Mentawai Island and mainland West Sumatra is two different logically and problematic. This is my experience in organization. So I think that's all. Thank you. I give to Sander.
Thank you, Indy. It's really helpful to have sort of a national legal view and then go down to regional. Really appreciate it. Quick reminder as we go through, you can post questions as they come up or discussion points for our discussion and Q&A. Well, now welcome our third speaker, Dr. Irfan. Go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. Good evening in Indonesia. And good morning, good afternoon, maybe in other part of the world. My name is Irfan Abubakar. I'm a lecturer and senior researcher at the State Islamic University. I am my research major is in religious moderation from a political, social, and cultural perspective. Today's presentations titled Measuring the Policy of Religious Moderation in the Prabowo Government. So I'm looking at the like a helicopter view of the religious moderation policies and to predict the future, near future of these policies. The transition of leadership from President Joko Widodo to President Prabowo has sparked mixed reactions from civil society and observers. On one hand, optimists see Prabowo as a continuation of Jokowi's legacy in promoting religious moderation and protecting minority rights. On the other hand, skeptics, however, recall Prabowo's association with militant groups such as the Front Pembela Islam and the Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia during earlier presidential campaigns, raising questions about his commitment to pluralism. So the purpose of my presentation is to examine the future of religious moderation under Prabowo's administration, and I'm focusing on tolerance and the protection of minority rights. So my points here is that the appointment of respected figures like Saruddin Umar and Gus Miftah, the very well-known popular preachers, signals a priority for religious moderation in the Prabowo government. However, the success of these policies will depend much on the capacity of political and bureaucratic institutions to effectively implement them. Let's look back at the recent history of religious moderation in Jokowi's era. I think at least there are at least three achievements I can recall here. Firstly, institutional reform. Regional moderation became a strategic focus in the 2020 to 2025 National Medium-Term Development Plan. One is counterterrorism. Jokowi disbanded militant groups like Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia 2017 and followed by disbanding of Front Pembela Islam in 2020. Secondly, he successfully, the DPR is the 2003 anti-terror law in 2018, and it significantly reduced terror incidents after 2018. The third achievement I can say here that administration revitalized the rule of Pancasila as a unifying ideology through the establishment of Pancasila Ideology Development Agency or PPIP with democratic adaptations different from the new order era indoctrination of Pancasila. And of course, the Jokowi administration have to face challenges, the rise of hate speech targeted minority groups, worsening divisions and polarization based on religious sentiment. For example, the 2017 Ahok case and other the regional autonomy issues. Central government intervention, like protecting the Ahmadi rights in Bangka in there was, a persecution against Ahmadiyya, the expulsion of the Ahmadis groups, and the central government successfully intervened to, save and protect their rights. But on the other cases, like in Meliana, cases in Tanjung Balai, the 2016, government have to face political resistance. I think also in the Ahok case, government Jokowi have to compromise with the political pressure during the time. While public support for banning extremist groups, militant groups was very strong, but some of the constitutional democratic experts concerned about the due process of law. Then what is the hopes for Prabowo's government? The first one, there is a hope of policy continuity. Prabowo's decision to appoint figures like Prof. Nasaruddin Umar and Gus Miftah shows a commitment to Jokowi's vision of religious moderation. As we know, Nasaruddin Umar, a moderate academic and Imam of the Istiqlal, most known for advancing gender equality in Islam, while Gus Miftah, a popular preacher advocating tolerance and pluralism with significant social media influence. and other hopes also in symbolism and direction. The inclusion of Gibran Rakabuming Raka as a vice president highlights continuity with Jokowi's political legacy. Religious moderation is further institutionalized under the 2025-2040 long-term development plan. And as beragama maslahat, or in English, religiosity for public good. So the religious moderation term has been integrated into the broader term of religiosity for public good. So this idea aiming not only to address intolerance and extremism, but also support national development. We are also seeing a challenge that will be faced by the Prabowo's administration. First one is regional autonomy. Local governments, as the panelists already highlight, may still align with intolerant groups. Some, areas at ethnic groups in Indonesia have a very strong identity in Islamic identity, like in West Sumatra, as highlighted by speaker. So the local government still aligned with the intolerant group, requiring strong central oversight to ensure compliance with national policies. Other challenges is both Nasaruddin, especially Gus Miftah, though highly respected, lack significant experience in bureaucratic administration, so necessitating a strong support system. Next, the other challenge is current narrative of religious tolerance focus heavily on Japanese cultural symbols like what Gus Miftah always, preach in his discourse. This is the risk alienation of non-Japanese communities, such as Bugis, Minang, Ambon. So it needs to expand this narrative to include diverse regional experience is very crucial. The other challenge is sensitive issues. How to address, an animosity or opposition to minority groups like the Ahmadi or the Shiite. This need to resolve conflict over places of worship has been highlighted before, require tactful conflict resolution and public awareness campaigns. So I will suggest some policy recommendations. Firstly, Prabowo's administration need to ensure the regional governments comply with national policies protecting minority rights. Second recommendations is the Religious Affairs Ministry need to expand the historical and cultural representation of tolerance to include diverse ethnic and religious groups across Indonesia in order to gain broader support nationwide. Thirdly, grassroots education programs. So it needs implement interfaith dialogue and community-based initiative to foster religious harmony. And last but not least, the Prabowo government need to provide Prof. Nasaruddin and Gus Miftah with managerial training and efficient bureaucratic system to implement policy effectively. And they need also to use digital platform to promote tolerance and counter hate speech, particularly targeting younger audiences. So in the conclusion, I would say that the Prabowo administration stands at crossroads in its quest to sustain and advance Indonesian tradition of religious moderation. The appointments of Nasaruddin Umar and Gus Miftah offer a strong foundation, but the success of their efforts depends on addressing key challenges such as regional bureaucratic capacity and inclusive representation. By fostering education, leveraging technology, and expanding narrative to reflect Indonesia's diverse cultural fabric, Prabowo's government has the opportunity to establish a lasting legacy of tolerance, unity, and democratic resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to each of our speakers today. We've had this webinar planned for about a month or so, and I was so interested because just being such a complex topic, focusing on a complex country, interesting to see all of the different threads. Now we'll transition into a question and answer / discussion portion with the time that we have left. Before we move over to more discussion and question and answer, I wanted to give Anis, if you have any thoughts that came up or anything that you want to share to to fill in, I'll give you the floor. Thank you for joining us
Yeah,
today.
yeah, thank you, Xander. Thank you, speakers. I think while listening to the presentation about the policy on paper, I think what remains to be seen under Prabowo is that how will he deal with unresolved problem? Like those explained by by Indira, by Era, and also by Dr. Irfan. So the status quo remain. Prabowo will not face any trouble. But what about people who are requesting his attention to immediately do something to resolve unresolved problem? So this remains to be seen. And then secondly, as religious freedoms are sensitive issues, there will be time in the in the future that somebody will demand Prabowo to respond to any upcoming religious conflict. And then from my my observation on his preference, he would like to see harmony and stability much more than right based, for example, issues. So again, here in this context, it remains to be seen how Prabowo will respond with the new religious conflict that might happen in the future. And then, last but not least, how will he deal with this disagreement on his own conduct and his own policy, which are related to his handling of a religious freedom. So again, past report are not good in terms of his problem solving way. He is accustomed with military ways or military method, and not really showing clear evidence on his his adherence to democratic values and 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 methods. I think that's all from me, Zender. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're seeing if some questions come in. Also, speakers, if you have questions for another speaker, that you're also allowed to participate in the Q&A. One question that I have that sort of pops up in each of your presentations is sort of balancing between maybe more formal or more administrative, and then maybe more social things that happen sort of outside of the legal system or regional system. I'm curious if any of you have some extra thoughts on sort of how do you balance those between working very technical and then also maybe working on more person to person, community to community point. I'll put that one out there. And then I see a question from Andrew, a former Asia Ref webinar speaker. So welcome back. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good evening, Xander. Good to see you again, and good evening to everyone. Selamat sore to my Indonesian sisters and brothers. I am based in Malaysia, and of course we look very carefully at what is happening in Indonesia as the big brother of the region. So my two questions are: what key things do you think Malaysia can or should learn from Indonesia in promoting religious plurality? Note that I've not used the word tolerance because I personally don't like the word tolerance. I think that's not so positive. More acceptance of religious plurality. So that's the first question. And learning from other people's mistakes or missteps, what do you think Malaysia should avoid doing, looking at Indonesia as an example? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Indira had to step out. So Era, if you have thoughts on this, I can give you the first chance at it.
Sure. So about that, how to solve the problem, I think the new government should be mapping problem first, because every problem have a different solving. For example, about a problem about the worship safely or established to worship, for example, there is a pattern in it is always that local government used to to obstacle that minority, and then they doesn't have charge, for example. The pattern is like they always so the authority of the local government to release that permit of building permit, but in the pattern is the local government, because force of that intolerance group, they doesn't want to release that permit, and then it's become problem. So for that, so the new government should be know what is the problem, and then for that, think about what is the solution. For example, in that there is a sanction is possible in by system in Indonesia, possible to the administrative way to give the administrative sanction for the from the national government to the local government, for example, but it never did in the freedom of religion issue. So that's I thinking about the solution. And the second question about that, how to balance between legal way or non-legal way. I believe that in freedom of Indonesia, we always try to avoid the legal way, because if you want to take the legal way, you have to be very careful, because it will be have a big consequences. So a non-legal still is the priority, but if you take the legal way, you have to know the risk and also are ready for the consequence of that legal way method. And the last question I forgot about from Mr. Andy. Can you repeat that, Zender?
Things that maybe Malaysia should avoid.
Malaysia.
yeah.
We spoke about also Malaysia last time a month ago, and yeah, Malaysia also have big problem about the freedom of religion. For example, you cannot buy something in the store. You have to be showing your identity card, you are Muslim or not. So I think what we can learn in Indonesia, I think in Indonesia, the minority group try to work together. For example, for now, sexual minority, they know they cannot bring this issue by themselves. So they work with the other minority group. Even it's very difficult, because between the minority group sometimes also have the problem. But I think that is the way how to work together between minority group, and also bring the public awareness. So minority public minority, so they can support, and then they know there is a lot of problem and minority still doesn't have freedom of religion.
Thank you, Irfan or Anis or Indira, if you're back, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on this? Feel free.
First, okay. The first question Xander addresses how to balance between the technical approach to the a non-formal, or maybe community-based approach, right? I think in Indonesia, as we know that we have a strong Islamic civil society that have very strong support in the communities, mainly Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah. Right now, in a political setup, the actors from this moderate Islamic organization has been included and integrated into the post administration. Many from Muhammadiyah, today less from the Nahdlatul Ulama. This is quite critical in order to, ensure that religious moderation will gain broader support from Muslim communities. And I think the government, through the Religious Affairs Ministry and the Ministry of elementary and secondary schools, that in charge of Muhammadiyah leaders, they would give very strong financial support to these great organizations to implement government program in order to promote religious tolerance and religious moderation. Talking about how strong they will support religious freedom, I would say they will continue moderate approach to, support religious freedom. They would be very careful in dealing with sensitive issues like, non-religious believers that can have strong voice in Indonesian's public arena, I would say that they will be very careful in dealing with this. But in terms of how to protect Ahmadis and Shiites religious groups, I believe they will be working very seriously in order to support Prabowo's policies of religious moderation. And of course, we need to have a strong voice from NGO that working for religious freedom to also, see and watch how these two organizations really sincerely, seriously work for religious freedom, because there is also concern that these organizations being co-opted by the government. So this is like an political co-optation could also risk, the future of Indonesian religious freedom and protection of, religious human rights. Secondly, how can we, Indonesia and Malaysia, learn together to, enhance our religious freedom? Perhaps Andrew do understand that Indonesia and Malaysia have a different social religious structure. In Indonesia, we have Muhammadiyah and the Nahdlatul that can work together and support the government's long-term policy for religious freedom and religious moderation. So conservative militant groups has been, marginalized, not by the government, but by these, quite hegemonic religious moderation. So in terms of discourse, narrative, they are quite strong in public arena. But in Malaysia, there is, in my observation, that the conservatism has been institutionalized by the government itself. That perhaps in positive way it can control the radical groups, but in other way it can be, very strong in a government. Perhaps can co-opt and work with the government to enhance their conservative interest. Today, we observe that many, NGOs of religious freedom concern about the lack of freedom. There are so many, limitation and restriction. Perhaps we need to see how can a religious group in Malaysia have, strong, leadership. I mean, the moderate, the traditional, groups can learn from the Nahdlatul Ulama's way of, balancing between religion and, state affairs or national affairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Indira, did you have something you wanted to add on onto this?
Okay, I give my experience how to find harmony in my experience and advocacy case in FoRB. My opinion in West Sumatra and many province in Indonesia, the problem is the government is not good to protect the FoRB, but sometimes the society is moderate and support to protect FoRB in Indonesia. For example, in my experience in West Sumatra, is popular with intolerance because many case. But in my experience, the suspect is government. If the government make the regulation not good, not protect the 4B. But in my experience, my in society in West Sumatra, sometimes is moderate and to success to find harmony, the resolution conflict, mediation, negotiation. So this problem is nothing and to make the protect the 4B. So it in my opinion support to empowering the society to moderate and conflict mediation is very very urgent this system in Indonesia for support to the legal aid for this for this case. I think that's all. Thank you, Linda.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have a hand from Jesse. I'll go ahead and invite you to unmute.
Great. I very much appreciated the topic of this focusing on FoRB and administration. because I found in Indonesia, as Era spoke about, that one of the kind of biggest areas in which FoRB is not respected is in the administrative state and administrative law, whether it's building permits, IDs, marriage registrations, those kind of things that ordinary citizens interact with a lot are often where their FoRB rights are the least respected. And I also was very interested, Indira mentioned, that the perspective of religious moderation for people living in Jakarta is very different than in West Sumatra. I wondered if any of the speakers could maybe talk about if there are particular areas, geographic areas within Indonesia that they'd like to see more focus on FoRB rights, or if, there are different types of rights or different types of issues. I know that's a big question, but if, from the international implementer perspective, I guess what I'm asking is geographically, where would they like to see more focus and on what?
Thank you, Jesse. For our speakers, whoever has a thought first, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, may I, Xander? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, actually, Indonesia, okay, largely Muslim majority, but not all areas are Muslim majorities. So this is what we need to understand. For example, Bali is an island with Hindu majority. So they have their own, religious freedom problem. Issues. There are a few cases on, difficulty of Muslim there to use, a speaker for prayer call, for example. But largely in Muslim majority areas are the one who have more, religious freedom issues, especially those mentioned earlier by speaker. Yeah, like West Sumatra is known with the high conservatism, growing conservatism there compared to, for example, North Sumatra. In Java, West Java is known to be more, I would say conservative compared to Central Java. So again, when we are talking about Indonesia, there are different issues in different regions with regard to religious freedom issues. Thank you.
You.
Very fun. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yes, in many regions and Muslim predominant majority, of course, there are, difference based on cultural, historical roots of the region. West Sumatra is very strong in terms of, intersection between ethnicity and religious identity. So this is like, combined identity. So many Muslims from West Sumatra would say that, Minang is an ethnic Muslim. It must be Muslim, like, and other areas like in West Nusa Tenggara or in South Sulawesi, such as, Makassar, or not necessarily Makassar, but like an district in South Sulawesi that identify themselves as a Muslim. So it's like a mingle of ethnic identity and religious identity, lack of experience with, pluralism will, be the cause or the root cause of perhaps religious conflicts or minority, rights problems there, But in other areas like in, metropolis but nearby Jakarta, there used to be an intolerant problem over there because of, urban issues, because there's a new urbanization and so many, social economical factors that also cause the problems. In this respect, the support or the strong control by the NGOs help the government to, to see or to review their policy on religious tolerance. Like, for example, Satara Institute, national-based NGO that work, regularly to do like an index for regencies and districts across Indonesia. It gives impact to the local government to really seriously, pay attention and consider, their performance in, religious tolerance and minority right protection. Some areas that used to be intolerant because of this exposure by this Tara index intolerant, then they become, improved. improve the index. So these NGOs work very, very beneficial, very, very good, for the local government to see, the level of tolerance. Thank you.
Thank you to our question askers, our question answerers, our presenters. Big thank you to Emily Long for sharing the slides and jumping in on that today. If anyone is interested in connecting one of our speakers to continue the conversation, ask questions, work together from that, feel free to email us and we can make sure that we get people connected. But with that, I promised our speakers I wouldn't keep them awake too long. And I know a lot of you are also in that time zone. So really appreciate you staying up late. For those of you on the other side of the world, thank you for getting up early. This was a really great presentation and discussion. So without further ado, thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.